Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Have you ever walked past an empty lot or maybe a totally modern parking garage and just wondered what used to be there 100 years ago? Well, today we're going to explore the absolutely fascinating and incredibly varied ways that communities actually manage to save their heritage from completely disappearing into the void. I really want you to think about this for a second. When massive historic landmarks disappear, how do we actually prove they were ever there? Because history, honestly, is incredibly fragile. It can easily vanish without a trace. Whether we're talking about a bustling town, a grand building, or some towering machine, literally nothing lasts forever unless someone puts in the immense, dedicated work to remember it. So to see exactly how this works, we're going to follow a pretty clear path today. First, we'll look at history that's lost to the archives. Second, saving decades of negatives. Third, preserving giant aviation history. And finally, historic charm and modern art. All right, starting with Section 1, Lost to the Archives. Let's see how some of our most vibrant communities literally only exist today as a paper trail. It is absolutely wild to think about 19th century Tennessee mineral spring resorts. Just picture this for a minute. Bon Aqua Springs was once this massive, incredibly luxurious destination. We're talking about a sprawling hub of activity, buzzing with up to 500 guests at any given time. They had grand accommodations, on-site hairdressers, bustling bowling alleys, and entire lakes specifically designed for aquatic sports. It was basically a thriving ecosystem of leisure. But despite its immense popularity and actually being rebuilt twice after devastating fires, the entire complex was finally demolished in the 1940s. It just goes to show how physical structures, no matter how grand or deeply ingrained in the local culture, are ultimately temporary. So, when all those great pavilions and bathhouses are wiped away by time and fire, what actually remains? Well, something like a simple, evocative 1897 letter penned by William Trousdale Peyton, which is now safely housed in the State Library and Archives. He wrote, "The place is beautiful, and we enjoy the evenings in a pavilion overlooking the valley and facing the west, so the view is magnificent about sunset." Just think about the incredible burden this places on our archivists. They are out there protecting these singular, fragile envelopes and delicate paper artifacts because they are quite literally the only proof these sprawling empires of leisure ever even existed. A massive resort, completely reduced to a single sheet of paper. Moving right along to Section 2, Saving Decades of Negatives. Let's transition from old paper over to McMinnville's past, so we could witness some active preservation happening in real time. 40,000! Just let that staggering number sink in for a moment. 40,000! That is exactly how many fragile, local newspaper photo negatives spanning from 1936 all the way to 1970 that historian Michael Hoffner has painstakingly digitized. When local newspapers change hands or shut down, historical film negatives are incredibly vulnerable. They're prone to damage from floods, fires, or honestly just ending up tossed into a dumpster by someone clearing out a dusty basement. Digitizing 40,000 individual images is a tedious, almost heroic archival task, but it's really the only way to rescue these vital moments from the brink of absolute destruction. Now, these digitized photos do something kind of magical. They act like a time machine, allowing us to visualize a totally lost landscape. Take the McMinnville 1888 County Courthouse, for example. It was a major, glorious local landmark, but by the 1950s, it had really fallen into disrepair. Caught up in that whole post-war allure of modernization, the community basically decided it was easier to demolish it and replace it with something way more utilitarian back in 1964. And why does this matter to us? Because towns all over the country made these exact same choices, tearing down beautiful architecture in the name of progress. Without these recovered negatives, the architectural heritage of the town would just be a complete blank spot for current residents. We lost a physical gem, but thankfully, we saved its memory. And it's just amazing how a local landscape shifts right before our eyes in these archives. Imagine a completely mundane turkey processing plant operating in the 1940s and then completely transforming by 1970 into the town's very first winery, the Erie Vineyards. This isn't just a change in a building's tenant, right? This represents a massive economic and cultural pivot for the entire region, captured almost purely by accident on film. An entire county-wide shift from agriculture and turkeys straight to high-end wine. Those scan negatives are literally windows into the community's evolving identity, showing us exactly how a town reinvents itself over the decades. Which brings us to Section 3, Preserving Giant Aviation History. We're heading to the Evergreen Museum, because obviously not all history fits into an envelope or a scanner bed.
Sometimes preserving the past requires a truly monumental physical and financial struggle. The incredibly volatile financial drama of the Evergreen Aviation and Space Museum is a perfect example of this. It all kicked off with an ambitious, victorious bid to save the famed Hughes H-4 Hercules, better known as the Spruce Goose, back in 1992. But preserving giant history is a total roller coaster. From triumphantly opening their aviation museum doors in 2001 and adding a massive space building in 2008, they went straight into terrifying foreclosure threats between 2014 and 2018. They faced multiple bankruptcies just trying to keep history's doors open. Ultimately, it took a massive, multi-million-dollar rescue by the Stoller Group in 2020 just to keep this specific history alive. It really highlights the immense and often totally unseen financial burden of keeping our monumental past intact. You immediately understand that daunting financial and logistical burden when you hear about the colossal artifacts they actually have on display. We're talking about the Spruce Goose, the legendary Lockheed SR-71 Blackbird, and get this, they didn't just park a 114-foot tall Titan II rocket, they had to literally construct a 2-story underground silo just to make it fit inside the building. And my personal favorite, they took a retired Boeing 747 and mounted it right on the roof of a water park to serve as the launch pad for their water slides. It is an awe-inspiring, utterly absurd, and highly engaging heavyweight approach to preserving history. You literally cannot put a 747 in a filing cabinet, folks. All right, finals top. Section 4, Historic Charm and Modern Art. Let's look at how holding on to the past through living museums isn't just about looking backward, but actually fuels a really thriving modern community. Today, McMinnville literally bakes history right into its streetscape. They have transformed completely normal sidewalks into an open-air gallery that respects the past while fully embracing new artists. They've rolled out this constantly growing collection of public art, from cast bronze statues of Ben Franklin in 2010 and Abraham Lincoln in 2012, to a stone dancer in 2016, a hammered bronze piece called Great Blue in 2017, and a beautiful marble sculpture called The Gift in 2019. It basically creates a living museum right under your feet as you're just out walking to get your morning coffee. And this preservation of charming, historic architecture provides the absolute perfect backdrop for vibrant modern tourism. In fact, downtown McMinnville was voted the 5th most charming main street in the U.S. in 2024. And here is the core takeaway for us today. Preserving old buildings isn't just some niche hobby for historians. It is economically profitable and socially vital. By saving their tree-lined historic avenues rather than bulldozing them for, more parking lots, they've created a highly desirable atmosphere. It draws tourists, fills modern wine tasting rooms, supports fantastic restaurants, and provides a backdrop for delightfully quirky community events, like their annual UFO Festival. It proves, without a doubt, that community heritage has immense, tangible value right now, today. So I really want to leave you with this thought to chew on. As our physical places constantly change, what digital or physical artifacts are we actually leaving behind to tell our own story? What mediums will future historians use to uncover the history we are making right now? Whether it's a delicate 1897 letter describing a sunset, a digitized negative of a long-forgotten courthouse, a 114-foot rocket stuffed in a silo, or a bronze statue on a vibrant main street, the mediums we choose to preserve our history absolutely shape how the future will remember us. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and definitely keep your eyes open for the history hiding in plain sight in your own community.